Yeah, I will, yeah, joined by Yufei here, Polaris, Snowflake, talk about Polaris, talk about, um, you know, the use case of Polaris. How can you manage large scale Lakehouse environments using a catalog like Polaris? How do you tackle those problems from the Polaris perspective? But yeah, I'll let you take the reins, Yufei. Go ahead. Um, feel free to jump into the presentation.
Thanks, Ron. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you fine. Yep.
All right, okay, cool. Thanks, Ron. This is Yufei, and thanks for having me here. Today, I'm going to talk about the how do we build the open and a government lakehouse with Apache Polaris. Let me get it started. And before we start, it's a little bit about me. I'm Yufei Gu. I'm a software engineer at Snowflake. I worked in the open source world for quite a bit. I was Hadoop PMC member, and I was also Iceberg PMC member. Later, I moved on to the catalog side, and I also work on the Apache Polaris, which is what we're talking about today. Polaris is still incubating, so I'm a PPMC member of Polaris. So today's talks, we're gonna talk about why do we need a REST catalog and the REST catalog now and the future, what kind of feature we have right now, and what kind of feature we are targeting in the future. Then we talk about Polaris, which is an exciting project of one of the reference implementation of Iceberg REST catalog. Uh, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are already familiar with Iceberg, but just in case you know a little bit of Iceberg, this is a like typical Iceberg tables layout. We have three layer of metadata files. The first layer called a metadata JSON file. It holds a lot of things, including the schema, partition spec, table properties. And second layer is manifest list, which holds all manifest files for one snapshot. And the third layer of the metadata is called manifest files, which will point to all these data files, then show they are Apache files, and also hold all these status min max for certain columns, so that when you query data, you can filter by these min max stats. So the first question is, can Iceberg table work without catalog? Yeah, you may guess right. It still can work without a catalog. It called pure storage table, right? And a lot of people are start to get use Iceberg table from beginning. We use the something called Hadoop catalogs. It's not necessarily related to the Hadoop, and it's not even catalogs. It's just one file on your storage system, right? And there's one file called version hint file. Every time you write a new version into that file, the version hint file will switch the point to the latest metadata file. So table still works. And there's a bunch of limitation for this solution. For example, the pool addressing. So every time you have to use the path for namespace at table, you cannot easily use any like SQL table identity namespace dot table name to reference your table. And if you want a table location different from the table's location, table name are different from table location, and namespace name are different from namespace location, right? And it lacks the data governance. For example, data lineage is extremely hard to do. If there's no good control, access control as well. Performance control, there's no caching because there's nothing centralized service at all, or no caching, no repeat file. So every engine, single engine, if they want to read this file, they have to repeat open file read, and for query data and metadata. There are also compatibility concerns because over time you're going to have different version of Iceberg clients, 1 or 3, even before that, like the 14 with 1.9, there's some compatibility issue, and of course, usually what happens, the old clients will overwrite what new client has, so it will break the new clients. And realistically, a lot of people use this solution. I think this is still very popular at this moment. They use high Metastore or GDB's catalog. And within that catalog, right now we have a concept of catalogs right now. Within that catalog, you have one. The only thing you need for that particular catalog is, of course, your table entity, which has the file point to your metadata files, metadata JSON files. And it solves a little bit more problems. For example, it addresses table nicely. You can use db1.table1 to reference your table. And it provides very basic data governance features for example, you can do access control on that catalog level. And engine still, if you look at this bar, engine still writes everything for this Iceberg table, including all this metadata, as well as all these data files. Engine will retry every time there's any conflicts. For example, you have the two concurrent write into that table. And if there's conflict happens, and you have to retry and lock the table, retry, which usually cause a lot of problem. And this performance concern as well, because there's no caching. Like for example, for metadata file, every time you have to read that from your storage, no matter HDFS, S3, GCS, right? And compatibility concern as well there as well, because engines still write all these files, right? Yeah, metadata files, engines, manifest files, right? So imagine one new table property has been introduced into the Iceberg table, then the older clients will never know that, and it just erase that new property, then which might break the new clients. So this is very typical problems we met about like 3 years ago. The table was corrupt because of the interaction between the client and the catalog. It's not ideal. You have to lock the table in case of the HMS, right? You have to lock the table and prepare everything, then committing to that table. Then you unlock it. And anything happens between that lock and unlocks, for example, the HMS sometimes, because of the heavy load, it will time out, then it will release lots, and then let another engine write into, which potentially just break that table. It's a severe situation where the whole table is corrupt. There's no write read can happen to that table. And we definitely nobody wanted this happen. And usually it takes a long time to recover to the latest working version. So this is one of the issue we see from the HMS. Before we jump into what kind of catalogs we really want, I want to tap a little bit more on the Iceberg concurrency model. We call it optimistic concurrency. That means for one single Iceberg table, we don't block any clients at the right times. We don't need a lock, right? We let them happen concurrently. This is happy path. For example, Iceberg table in version 1 and clients made some change and commit as version 2. Then another client 2, and make some change based on the version 2 and commit as a version 3. But a lot of time, if you have the concurrent writes, which happens a lot, especially when you use streaming or any more clients concurrent writing to one single table. It happens is they could have happens in parallel that, for example, client 1 did some change based on V1 and commit successful at the V2. But client 2 also use V1 as a base version and applies the change at the V2 prime. The V2 prime, as you may guess, will fail. And the server will return back, say, okay, there's conflicts, you cannot commit that. Then client 2 have to do the conflict resolution. Sometimes it's quite easy, just rebase. Sometimes you have to redo the whole job. Then you can commit as the V3. So as you can see, the conflict is costly. because sometimes the conflict resolution where we involve all this recomputation of all this data, remove all the existing files, complete start from scratch, which may take like 2 hours. And what we needed to do is to prevent it early and resolve the embedded. This is what, like, this is make the whole table write much better and much more efficient and more reliable. So this is what we need for catalogs. It provides reliable and low latency commits, because if the commits happens faster, then chance of conflicts will be less, right? And it requires better conflict resolution. A lot of conflict resolution can actually happen in the server side. If you think more about that, server has more context about the conflicts, and it can resolve even better than the client side. Client don't know each other existing. And we also want easier client implementations, because there are so many different clients, not only like traditional Spark Spring, but also all these new like Python, Rust, Go clients try to talk to the catalogs to read, to explore this Iceberg table. And we, last but not least, the data governance feature we also need for a tradition, for a kind of a full-fledged the open Lakehouse. We need data governance features. Um, so about 3 years ago, Iceberg community come up with one solution, which seems very simple. It shifts the client side responsibility to the server side. If you look at this bar, the catalogs right now in charge of the metadata file writing, and engine does not do that anymore. So I'm going to show you why this simple idea changed the way we use Iceberg table completely. So by shifting the client responsibility to the server side can handle commits and the retry. You don't have to lock the table, which makes the commits much faster and more reliable. Also, because server side write the manager.json file, and the REST API design is change based. For example, if you only need to change the table property, the client does not have to submit like schemas or partition specs, nothing, just the particular change you need, right? It reduces compatibility risk dramatically. Like, you don't write the whole table as long as that server is consistent, right? Which will always be. It improves the decision making and the commit time, because server usually have much better context than the client side. For example, if you have a DDR vs YAML, we don't have to fear if just the table property change versus another, like the append data, right? Another advanced feature is compaction vs ingestion. Usually, Iceberg table need a compaction when there's too much small files to impact the read performance. So, but at the same time, the compaction itself is a snapshot and writing to that table. At the same time, you have the ingestion pipeline and keep pumping data into that table. Then we usually wanted to kind of prioritize the ingestion in over the compaction. And server can do that by robust compaction and still let the ingestion in if it see the conflicts, right? Multi-table transaction is another good example that only a centralized server like REST can do. The pure storage cannot do that. Another benefit for the REST catalog is because it's REST clients, and also means less responsibility for the client side, which means like simple clients. You don't have to do a lot of stuff from client sides, which makes it really nice. Like, for example, we right now we have a multiple language for Python, Go, Rust, Iceberg, like PyIceberg. When PyIceberg getting started in the beginning, it only supported like REST. Later, we extend to the other catalog, but Python REST is really nice to explore the table. Not like, even you don't want to write into table, you don't want to read data. It's still a very nice tool for any data engineer to to explore the table, like to see how many snapshots it has, like how many files it has within that table. Yeah. So REST catalog spec, Iceberg REST spec, we showed as IRC, actually evolved really fast. We adding a lot of feature recently, like view support, E-tag to improve the performance when you load a table multiple times, and the server capability to support the compatibility across multiple service versions and capability. Credential refreshing is critical for any long-running jobs to continue to get credential for their Iceberg tables. And we are working on a bunch of the other stuff, like for example, server-side planning, which is super useful for like untrusted ending fine-grained access control, as well as you want to read these particular data table as Iceberg table or Pocket table as Iceberg table. Fine-grained commands is super useful for like you have the soup. You have very frequent commits into that table append only. This will be very useful. Even endpoint, and we're gonna emit event like table has been changed, update, or table create, delete, all these event to the downstreams. UDF, UDF is another good one. We try and add into the Iceberg spec so that we can have UDF defined within the catalog, and all the engine can visit this UDF. Adaptance key is another reliability improvement so that table corruption were less likely. Last but not least, FGAC. This is very interesting. We try to add one of the reader restriction every time you load the table, so that you can have the trust engine to do the FGAC to the fine-grained access control for your table by rely on the reader restriction every time you load that table. Sure. With so many benefits of the Iceberg REST catalogs, unfortunately, the community decided not to do any reference implementations. That's how, like, Apache Polaris come into the picture. Where it's about 1.5 years ago, Snowflake developed Apache Polaris these catalogs in-house and donate to the Apache Foundation. Polaris is a reference implementation of Iceberg REST protocol. So that means it can support all these all these engines, no matter it's open source engine like SparkFlame's Trainer or the proprietary ones, right? And it supports all these new features, including like table view APIs, OAuth 2, multi-table transaction, the conflict resolution I talked about, like rollbacks, the compaction, e-tags, credential refreshings. All these specs are supported by the Polaris. I would probably Polaris is best reference implementation at this moment for IRC. At the same time, Polaris also support all these storage, including clouds, object store like S3, Azure's object store, GCS, as well as the S3 compatible one, like on-prems, like MinIO and Apache Ozone. Another great feature is centralized security and access. Polaris can support. Polaris have two great features called RBAC. It's like native RBAC as well as credential binding. So with these two features, like before that, actually, every time you like if you want to configure your Sparks or StarRocks to visit Iceberg table, you have to configure two sets of the credential. One is for catalog, another for your storage, like S3. And right now with RBAC and the credential friendly, you don't have to do that. The only thing you have to do is to make sure this engine has right principle to visit, and everything can control by the Polaris with a single place to control your access control, like read only if this engine or this particular user can only read this table or can read and write into that table. Okay. Of course, Polaris is built for running natively on the Kubernetes, so you can run it everywhere, even your single node machine. Here's entity hierarchy of the Polaris. We at the top level, you can create multiple catalogs within the Polaris. Each catalog can have its storage configuration. For example, it's against a local file system, against a certain S3 bucket or Azure prefix. And catalogs right now we consider as there's two type of catalogs. One is internal, which is native Polaris catalogs, and it can do support read and write, as well as the external one, which can be used for federation. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. And under that particular catalogs, there's multiple namespace, and namespace can be nested. And under namespace, there's you can put the table and a view under that. This is the machine model of the Polaris, and as you can see, you can create the principles, which in a lot of systems we call it users, and you can create principal roles in a lot of systems we call it groups. Here we have three principles. Alice is the system domain principle, and we have ETL streaming engine principle, as well as the AI ML application principle. And these blue box principal roles, it's a group of the privileges. And under the catalogs, we have catalog roles, which groups a permission on these catalogs, right? For example, this catalog admin has a lot of permissions for this the whole catalog to read, write, and property change list permissions. Data admins has read, write, which is suitable for the data engineer roles. And catalog readers, it only has read-only permission for this namespace and the tables. And we recently also did something called offline integration that you can actually get run of the RBAC and rely to your third-party PDP policy start point to do the authentication, which is already merged into the system. It will release in the 1.3. A few new features we just getting into the Polaris federation, for example, catalog federations, which is very useful, especially for people who are still in the HMS or release catalogs they want to migrate, right? And this migration may not happen in one shot, like 1 day, right? The migration usually take a lot of times. Then federation is important in that case that you can let two systems run in parallel and gradually migrate your workflow from one catalog to another. These two models we support, push-based federation, it's read-only. Every time this is read-only, right? Paris as the you can create new catalogs called the external catalogs, and for read-only situation. And every time the remote catalogs can send the notification, send the change through the notification event endpoints, so that the catalogs namespace and table view within the Polaris can get notification, get the change, and update table accordingly. Another is pass-through federation, which is more advantage. Means you can actually have these external catalogs within Polaris and read and write into the remote catalogs. So right now we support static startup for the catalog level, not go down to the namespace level, because that makes a lot of change. Like you usually have to do a lot of configurations. So in this case, only catalog configurations required to like remote catalogs. This is remote catalog URL credentials. So once you configure that catalogs, you can pass through everything under that catalogs for namespace, tables, views. At this moment, no ID federation is supported. Means you probably still have control only the catalog level permission, and there's no fine-grained permission control for these kind of federation for namespace and table view. These three type of the remote catalogs we support. REST, for example, if you want to federate to the remote, like Glue provides IRC, and you can do that. And if you and Hive is very popular one. If you have the Hive meta store and you want to do the migration, you can use Hive. You can do this federation to the HMS. Hadoop is the pure storage one. Well, it is supported at this moment. And another great feature is the policy and fine-grained access control. We have introduced the policy store within the Polaris. It's mainly a policy store which provide the pluggable policy types. You can bring your own policy types, no matter it does not constrain to certain types of Ranger or OPA. And it naturally supports the schema evolution and the versioning to make sure everything is safe when you try to bump up your policies, and it can roll back. It also supports the inheritance. For example, if one policy is applied to the catalogs, all this namespace and table will automatically get this policy if that's inheritable policy. We have the table maintenance pairs policy built in at this moment as a system level policy. And another great feature is FGAC. So with fine-grained access control, we can attach certain FGAC policy into certain namespace and tables so that the trust engine can have this policy, can read through the Iceberg new proposal, read the description every time load the table. Then this trust engine can enforce the policy by evaluating this read description and apply all this, for example, the row filtering and the column masking for this table. Here's the roadmap. Flash roadmap. It's community-driven roadmap. As you can see, we have a bunch of new features already available. Iceberg IRC supports data support, catalog federations, RBAC, credential bannings. Yeah, this one is SSO identifier federations. Right now, you can use third-party IDP to do your federation without rely on the native one within the Polaris, which a lot of the organization love that because most of them will already have their IDP within their organizations. Policy store and table maintenance policies, catalog migrators are one of the feature that if you want to migrate your historical catalogs into the Polaris, yeah, you can use this tool to do so. A few features we are working on and we are targeting data lineage we're trying to bring into the Polaris next year. Row column access control, as I said, the FGAC one, we are working together with Iceberg PMC to do so. Tagging features, encryption is in our roadmap. Auditing events, we are already working on that. We try to support the event listener as well as the IRC's event endpoint, so that all these downstream, this is very useful, all the downstream to get the events. For example, this table has been changed, this table has been dropped, or that namespace has been created, that all these downstream can do things accordingly. It depends on this event has been has been sent out. Unstructured data support, this is also one of the highest priority for us. And ABAC, as we see that OPA integration has already happened, and next step is to naturally introduce ABAC attribute-based access control to the Polaris. And observability stuff, including metrics, all kinds of metrics, table metrics, as well as the operation metrics. Hoodie support is almost done. Actually, we just merged the PI yesterday to support the Hoodie table within the Polaris through one new concept called a general table. And a table format convention means if, for example, you have a multiple type of table, bucket table, data table, and Hoodie tables, we can rely on certain service like X table to convert one table format to another, so that the other engine, which, for example, certain engine only recognize Iceberg, they can still read that table. Server-side planning is another great feature that for untrusted engine, fine-grained access control, as well as the you want to serving different table. Let's say you want to serving data as Iceberg, you can use this API to do so. MCP server is a great feature and a very interesting one to interact with Polaris. We've already have the POC and the out, and we've actually already merged into that one. We're going to publish very soon. All right, that's pretty much about the Polaris. Welcome to join the community. We have a lot of the diverse expertise, and we have PPMC member from a lot of the organization like Snowflake, Dremel, Google, Microsoft, AWS, and Conference. And welcome to join the community, contribute to these new projects. And any contribution is great. If you want to, like, for example, you can add new features, fix bugs, documenting enhancement, and any suggestion is welcome. All right, this is the Bash detail report.
All right, thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for that presentation, Yufei. Awesome. Yeah, we were able to kind of see. Hopefully, folks who are new to Polaris, can see the value in it, and you give a great overview of the roadmap as well. Feel free, guys, to drop in your questions in the chat. I will get to them shortly. But first, Yufei, I have a few questions of my own surrounding Polaris and just the Lakehouse in general. So, your presentation, I feel like one of the big things with catalogs and especially Polaris is governance, right? The centralized RBAC, credential vending, isolations of users, application groups. So with the advent of Polaris, why is governance, if you were to point it or isolate it to one or two key things, why is governance so hard these days in Lakehouses, even though there's great tools like Polaris sitting out there? Do people just not know? I mean, what is it? Is it legacy systems? What do you think it boils down to?
I think one of the major thing right now is fragmented. Like if you look at the open, especially if we're talking about open source stack for the data infrastructure, right? A lot of the technology are fragmented. Like for example, you have Rangers, OPAR, and HMS. They are not necessarily easy to integrate with each other. And a lot of the new authentication methods, like the latest ones we use, OAuth or CLV for, and these are not naturally built into your stack. I think what Fast is trying to do is trying to become the central piece that you can easily hook whatever your technology you really want. For example, we provide the default one. For example, RBAC, right? Native RBAC is very convenient for any user to get started without hook to another like Ranger or Punch for authentication. But if you really want, you have advanced usage you want to really reuse your OPAR server, you can still do that through the Polaris with a little bit of extra work to make sure this mapping happens smoothly. So get to your point, I think we need one centralized place to support all these features can integrate together. Like for example, the authentication is one thing. Actually, consider about the credential vending is no catalogs doing that before the IRC implementation was there. HMS does not do that. JDBC catalog does not do that. It's a great feature for any data engineering team. So that they don't have to, like, it's painful. Believe me, that it's painful to configure two sets of configuration in two different systems, and you want to make them consistent across multiple places.
Okay, yeah, no, I completely agree. Especially the fragmented data, it's especially difficult, like you said, where not every engine supports a specific protocol or doesn't connect to a catalog. We had I would say a problem, but something where there's a situation where maybe you're not credential vending and you're giving the query engine too much power, right? You give the super user privilege to the query engine, or it doesn't support, say, an OAuth flow that it needs to, or say like a token exchange, for example. We in previous versions of StarRocks, we saw users didn't want that super user privilege, and we now in our most recent release 4.0, now we kind of do a jot token integration. But yeah, I think the integration with each of the catalogs is one of the biggest things, especially around RBAC. So I think that makes sense. So on that note, given that Polaris integrates with so many different engines, so many different tools, what kind of goes into the decision process for, hey, do we want to integrate with this tool as well? I mean, does something integrate cleanly? Does this respect the common protocols and standards that we want? How do you maintain consistency and interoperability when you're integrating with so many different tools? I mean, how does that how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So first, we want to adopt the open standard as much as possible, right? Especially like if we're talking about IRC, it's an open standard from the Iceberg community, which is a big win for whole industry. Actually, the Iceberg is kind of winning the table formats. So IRC is the standard where it enable interoperability across multiple engines as well as catalogs, right? So we want to, from Plaid's perspective, we want to embrace all these open standard, include IRC and including the OAuth 2, as well as for example, the data lineage if we want to do that, or we can embrace all these open standard instead of we develop something by ourselves. At the same time, when we develop something by ourselves, for example, policy stores, we try to be more generic, not attached to certain policies. And we try to, for example, for non-Iceberg table support, like generic tables, we have this concept called generic table to support Delta, Hoodie, and Parquet table, potentially for the unstructured data. So when we design that, we'd be very careful to make sure that can work with every single table format and not specific to the one particular table format. This is where we try to moving forward so that it can fit into the larger ecosystem instead of the niche use case. By decision making, I think it's completely community driven, and anybody can contribute ideas, and the best idea will win when we have a discussion in the community. Uh, so that's how Apple's trying to support all kinds of integration across the whole ecosystem.
Cool. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Trying to adhere to the open format, to the IRC as much as possible so as to not deviate. Um, so I guess something interesting I'd like to bring up also, since we're talking about, this is a StarRock setting as well. I'm here from StarRocks. There was a great article written recently on the StarRocks and Polaris integration, which I'll just drop into this chat as well. But with that StarRocks and Polaris integration, what do you think? What kind of what do you kind of stood out or stands out from a StarRocks perspective to our approach to catalog control and integration? Is there anything that kind of is a key differentiator to you? Do you think what are some of the benefits do you think that users see now that Polaris is fully integrated with StarRocks? What kind of jumps at you? Kind of an open-ended question there.
Yeah, I think this is great integration. So we want the whole ecosystem to be like when we're talking about open lakehouse, right? We want the catalogs and these engines can work together, right? For any users who want to use StarRocks as their engine and who want to use Polaris as their catalogs for their open lakehouse infrastructure, the stack, they can just do that. And I think the current integration is very good starting point. Say, okay, you can easily just connect them together and without any issues. And further, I think we have more to do so that we can further extend to the other things like data or hoodie types or different packet tables, CSV, unstructured data supports, we can go through even beyond the IRC so that all these users who I think a lot of the users they don't only have Iceberg table. In that case, we need a I think Polaris is a good place, as well as the StarRocks is a good place to getting started with the different table formats. Not only Iceberg, right? Iceberg is best experience there. To be honest, like if you look at the StarRocks and plus uh, Polaris, it will provide the best solution for your whole stack. At the same time, we try to extend to much more than that.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a good starting off, good jumping off point if you're interested in implementing, you know, a catalog in an open way. Couple more here, guys. Kind of like more general. Well, do you see Polaris? Because to me, do you see Polaris becoming kind of like the de facto metadata plane for the Lakehouse? Kind of to me, it's kind of similar to how Kubernetes became the control plane for your compute, right? I feel like, do you see Polaris kind of taking the place of the metadata plane as the de facto where people will be flocking? Where do you see Polaris in the landscape? Because now there's kind of catalogs popping up very very often now, right? So
Yeah,
where do you see Polaris among that?
yeah. I think Spice is in get a lot of attractions in a lot of the big company. For example, the OPAR integration actually is contributed by the Bloombergs, right? Google is writing their spanner consistent persistent layer on to the Paris, and we have so many collaboration with across the industry. Uh, I think the two big advantage of the Paris is first, it's provide the best IRC implementation. Like a lot of the feature, we're definitely first onboarding to the Polaris, and performance, IRC performance, reader performance, writer performance will be much better because we have so many advanced features within Polaris, and this is not easy to catch up. Uh, the another big advantage of Varus is we have so many data governance features that it can support all kinds of use case in the future, so that you can use Varus for your open lakehouse infrastructure as a central piece of the catalogs. So I hope that could be an industry stand. We are working on that. Hopefully, like we can working together as a community to make that happen.
Great, awesome. What kind of jumping off of that a little bit? Uh, is there any, I guess, is there any advice you give to organizations with some of this fragmented data, designing their first open data lakehouse today? Things maybe like, do you go immediately jump into Iceberg? Is that the table format you have to use out of the box? Is the catalog? I mean, maybe the catalog. I would imagine maybe is the first thing to think about. Or I mean, what are you thinking when you're designing the lake house? What kind of comes first? What is your piece of advice for folks?
Yeah, I think the catalog's not necessarily the first thing come to your mind when you design open catalogs, but the one of the most essential piece where you want to support all kinds of use cases, data governance, and data exploring features. Um, this like still a lot of the organization when they come to the design, I think the things they consider is their ingestion patterns, whether use Iceberg is a reasonable thing, which I believe so. And all this business insight, like all these use case where the first thing you think about the how does that fit into your use case, right? What kind of the engine you trying to use? I think it's one of the its great benefit for Iceberg table is you can use all kinds of engine to meet your requirements, whether you want to have frequency ingestion or you want a soup large data set within one table. It's all there, like it's already there for all this engine. So how do you stitch them together? Is another great question. That how do you meet your data governance requirements, right? For example, you've already have IDPs and how that integrates with a central place to manage all your data sets with uh, appropriate access control. I think Paris can have a lot there, which provide the central place to manage all your data set. Um, that's I think a lot of things we have to think about. I think the another is like how do you manage the policies? How do you manage the trust ending, untrust ending, fine grained access control? Um, th- some of them still working in progress. There's no good answer there. If you are working on the open source world, there's a lot of routes. For example, if you use OPA, Trino can already do the FGACs by leverage these policies, right? And Polaris can definitely help there as well. And if you want rely like natively use Sparks or any engine to use read restriction to do the fine grained control, then the community is working really hard on that so that it's still possible in the future.
Yeah, I completely that makes sense. Maybe not. Maybe the catalog may not be the first thing, but it's very use case dependent. I mean, what query engine, what um, format will align with your existing data requirements, your data velocity. It's a very case by case basis. The last question from me before we head on to the few questions we have from the audience is, what are you most excited about in the upcoming roadmap, and maybe what are users most excited about? Because I saw things like data lineage, I saw audit events. You mentioned unstructured data is kind of a P1 or P0. What kind of excites you as part of the upcoming development?
Yeah, it's really hard to pick one of them because all these features really exciting. Unstructured data is really exciting, and I love the like machine learning use cases require that. Hoodie integration as well as table convention, is really exciting. And the AI features we try to build it for metadata explorations on top of the Paris is also really exciting. I think so we also work with StarRocks people for collaborate for this one, MCP plus the aging for the catalogs that you can make more sense out of your metadata from your catalogs. Catalog became one central piece where hold all your metadata, maybe not hold, but at least the endpoints, a portal for you to query for you to explore. Then use AI tool is like much more reasonable to explore all kind of the metadata for your whole data sets, right? You can ask question like what is table like larger than 300 gigabytes? I never used it in past 6 months. You probably don't need that table. You can delete that, right? So this is a very exciting feature, and as well as the tagging lineage, all the things it definitely will happens in the next year because we are working very hard on that, and tagging data lineage. I think it's all great features with all data source, all of this metadata, they are not necessarily, as I said, they are not necessarily persistent by Polaris. They can be, Polaris can be the portal for them. We have to figure out the portal, the open standard for all kinds of metadata so that you have one unified portal for all these kind of metadata as well as the data set you have. Then we can build upon the semantic layer with AI engine to query them, to make more sense of make sense of them, and ask all kinds of questions. I'm really excited about that future.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to get your 2 cents on it. Thank you. Okay, that pretty much concludes my questions. let's take a look. There's a couple questions we have here in the Q&A section. I'll make this first question public here. So from Fabio, kind of specific to UDFs, so how are UDF functions defined, and how is back/forward, so backward or forward compatibility with the client enforced in Polaris?
Yeah, it's a good question. So UDF is an effort we are collaborating with the Iceberg community. I was driving the whole effort with everyone from Iceberg community to make that happen. So the first version of the UDF is SQ UDF only, and how UDF function defines engine or REST lines still be able to define that. So we will store them as the metadata file, just like table metadata file, but different formats for sure, different metadata. And how is backward compatibility with clients enforced? And then because I'm talking about SQUDF, right? So there's no single solution for the SQUDF. It's still dialectic representations for each engines. You can for sure provide multiple versions for that to support like rollbacks, right? And evolutions for your UDF. It's still largely like the metadata as well as the catalog can only enforce the version and make sure the version is correct and you can roll back. But like the semantic cross multiple version still uses the responsibility to make sure that works cross multiple engine with same semantic and same with the different versions.
Cool. Hopefully that answers your question, Fabio. Feel free to ask any follow-ups. Let's take a look at the chat as well. A couple questions in there. Vijay, I think how to get started. We're building a lakehouse from scratch and looking for options. I think I had asked that kind of similar question to you, Yufei, earlier. So hopefully that kind of answers that question there. From Ankit, are we going to have a feature? We're going to have a feature that allows querying equality deleting files on external tables through Snowflake.
Yeah, that's seems like a good question for Snowflake. I think it's not related to the Polaris itself. The Polaris is catalogs, and you need a engine to query your table for equal delete. I think it's it's best to check with Snowflake product team for this question.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's see, another one from Sachin. Does Polaris have integration with other standard catalogs like Glue HMS? So,
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one of the slides is about catalog federation with the Polaris. So Polaris right now can support the HMS federation. For example, you have a existing HMS, right, running all your critical workloads, and Polaris you can come up in Polaris, Polaris in Polaris HMS, then federate to your HMS. Then at the same time, like two system works well. The source code is still in your HMS, and you can read write from Polaris for that HMS table as long as you set in the property access control for your table namespace. That's how it integrates with HMS. I think it will help a lot, especially for use case where you want to migrate from the HMS to Polaris. And Glue support IRC. So Polaris already support IRC federation so that you can use Glue as remote catalogs and federate all these catalog table namespace from Glue to the Polaris. This similar thing happened to HMS. You can path through the HTTP request from Polaris to Glue, and here you want to get rid of that connection, or you can keep that for a very long time.
awesome, cool. I think that covers all the questions. If you guys have any other ones, please let us know. We can answer them after the fact as well. But yeah, otherwise, feel free, Yufei. So that is the Polaris Git repo QR code, right? So if you're interested, I'm sure Polaris is always looking for more contributors. It's always looking for more folks to bring it into their pool of projects to contribute to. So feel free to check out Polaris. Feel free to check out our integration with Polaris. And one more question here from Cliff. Does token refresh? Let's try to bring this to stage. One more question. Does token refresh require a specific version of the Iceberg API?
Yes, because that's the new endpoints introduced a few months ago, and you will require, I believe, 1.8, Iceberg 1.8 is good enough for your Java application. And if you use other language like Python, I don't know much detail about how Iceberg implement these endpoints. Basically, your clients have to recognize that endpoint, whether you rely on the open source version, for example, Java, like 1.8 plus should be good. But any other clients, you will need to double check or do the implementation by yourself.
Cool. And I'm sure Yufei, they could verify that with the docs as well, right, on the repository. Cool. Yeah. So I guess that, like I said, any other questions, feel free to shoot them. We'll try to reach out afterwards to answer them. But otherwise, feel free to check out the Polaris repo. Feel free to check out our integration with StarRocks. Thank you all for attending the webinar today. Hopefully, this was a nice, informative kind of intro to Polaris, where Polaris is heading. And kind of an introduction or good starting spot if you're newly building out your data lakehouse and need a good catalog layer to kind of join in with all of your other data. But yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you Yufei for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of
it's
course.
Really good discussion.
Of course,
with everyone here.
Always a great time. But yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Yufei. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.
See you. Bye.